Let's talk about something interesting. This idea of productivity. We're going to explore a few concepts for learning and focus that, well, they work so well with our brains that they almost feel like a cheat code. It's not about forcing things. It's about understanding our own internal wiring and using it to our advantage.
You know that feeling, right? You've got something important to do, a deadline is getting closer, and you sit down ready to go. But your mind has other plans. Suddenly, you're deep diving into a random topic on the internet or just scrolling through your phone without even realizing it.
And it's such a common human experience, isn't it? You snap out of it, and hours have just evaporated. You're left with almost nothing to show for it. It feels like the day was lost before it even began. But what's really happening there? It's probably not a failure of who you are, but a failure in the approach.
So what is going on? Why do our best intentions seem to just fall apart so easily? It seems we might be looking at the problem from the wrong angle entirely.
Here's the core realization. Focus isn't really a matter of brute force. It's not about just being more disciplined. That feeling of being scattered or unmotivated, it might not be a sign that something's wrong with you. It could just be that the tools and systems we've been taught to use aren't a good match for how our minds actually operate.
And this quote just captures that idea perfectly. Our success on any given day isn't really decided by how motivated we feel when we wake up. It's often decided by the invisible systems and the environment we've set up around us. That's where the real influence is. And that leads to this really fundamental shift in perspective. What if we stop trying to force ourselves to work and instead just design an environment where focus is the easiest, most natural thing to do?
The contrast here is pretty telling. The old way, the discipline approach, feels like a constant draining battle. You're always fighting distractions. But the design approach, that's about just taking the distractions off the table completely. It's about building a system where even on your least motivated day, you still end up doing the right thing.
So what does that look like in the real world? Well, it often starts with our environment, both the physical one and, maybe more importantly, the digital one.
You know, the goal seems pretty simple. Turn your phone from this bright, shiny slot machine into a dull, boring tool. When you strip away the color, hide the apps that are designed to be addictive, you take away the psychological reward. The brain stops looking for that little dopamine hit, and your attention can come back to the real world. Those first few moments after waking up seem to set the trajectory for the entire day. A simple routine like this isn't just about ticking off boxes. It's a way of sending a quiet signal to your brain that says, today, we're in control. It's about building a little momentum for the world has a chance to start throwing distractions at you.
This is like a kind of conditioning for focus. By consistently using the same cues, a particular playlist, a certain type of tea, even a specific hoodie you only wear when you work, you start to train your brain. After a while, just putting on that hoodie can become a signal for it's time to focus, and the mind just sort of follows along.
Now, it's interesting to see how the same idea of working smarter, not harder, applies to learning. Because it turns out that the way most of us were taught to study is actually pretty inefficient.
Have you ever noticed this? A task that should take 10 minutes somehow ends up taking an hour? Well, that's Parkinson's law in action. The mind seems to use whatever time is available. The trick is to give it less time. By setting really short, intense deadlines, we create an urgency that naturally brings focus with it.
And then there's the observation that not all information is created equal. The 80-20 rule suggests that in many cases, about 20% of the material will give you 80% of the results. The key then becomes identifying that crucial 20% and really focusing your energy there. It's another example of working smart, not just long.
This is probably one of the biggest misunderstandings about learning. Passively rereading notes feels productive, but it's not very effective. The brain needs to struggle a little bit to form strong memories. Active recall, which is just testing yourself, pulling information out of your memory, is what actually seems to burn that information into our neural pathways.
There's this idea that if you can't explain something simply, you don't really understand it. This technique is a beautiful way to test that. When you try to explain a complex idea in simple terms, you immediately see where the holes in your own understanding are. It forces you to go back and learn it for real. And then you get into some really fascinating techniques. Things like linking memories to a specific sense, like a smell, which can act as a powerful trigger for recall. Or the ancient idea of a memory palace, using familiar physical locations to store information mentally. There's even neuropriming, where studying with a bit of background noise can train your brain to be better at filtering out distractions later on.
All of these ideas and hacks are powerful in their own right, but they all seem to depend on one single foundational resource that most of us just don't think about enough. We get so obsessed with managing our time, but we often forget about the most important variable. You can have all the time in the world, but if you have no energy, you have no focus, you get no results. We manage our calendars down to the minute, but we forget to manage the very fuel that allows us to do anything at all.
And these are the things that seem not negotiable for that. Sleep isn't a luxury. It's when the brain consolidates memories. Moving our bodies boosts brain function. And clearing out all the mental clutter before bed lets you start the next day with a clean slate. Energy really is the invisible engine behind all productivity.
And maybe this is the most important thought to hold on to. If you feel scattered or tired or unmotivated, it might not be a character flaw at all. It might just be that you've been going into a difficult battle without the right tools.
So now you're armed. You had these ideas, these strategies for designing your environment, for learning more effectively, and for managing your own energy. The only real question left is, what will you do with that understanding?